Okay, we'll have an update on what's going on in, Palestine, Israel, coming up around 10 past 10, just before we wrap up the show, which will be hosted by Giuliani as well after that. So listen out for that. But before we get there, of course, as always, we have the feature we call Champion People. And we call it that because it's something that I embrace, as you know, as someone who drives Champion South Africa. We speak to people from our community that we think sort of puts that category of champion people. One of them is my friend, I should say, Ebrahim Patel. Ibrahim, salam alaikum, and
Well,
great that you're a part of us.
wa alaikum salam, Ashraf, and so wonderful to be with you this morning.
I'm just thinking, we've never had an on-air conversation before. Do you know that? Like never. I'm amazed.
Never we've had.
Yeah, there's always a first time, But let's talk about conversations that you have generally. Do you enjoy talking and sharing your own vision about whether it's business or ethics and nation building that you do? I mean, do you enjoy it or you don't?
Ashraf, I think as humans, we really enjoy talking. It's part of the psychology of humans. And I always enjoy talking to people, especially people like yourself, who are so positive and energetic, because what it does is that it gives me that positiveness and energy as well.
I'm looking at the piano in the background. Unless it's a virtual screen, and I'm wondering, do you play the piano? Or are you going to tell somebody else?
The wonderful thing of technology these days is you can be anywhere in the world.
Well, there you are. Absolutely. All right, let's talk about.
I
I mean,
mean,
I
Ashraf,
yeah.
imagine you focused on the piano. I think that you focus on the fireplace. I mean, having a fireplace in Durban is like almost saying redundancy.
In fact, I'll get to that later on. Yeah, but okay, now that you mentioned it. But okay, let's talk about instead of putting out or putting on fires, let's talk about what is it that you do. So perhaps a one-line bio of Ibrahim Patel, according to you. Tell us.
Ashraf, I love connecting people. I love connecting businesses so that we become part of a global economy. And my passion is how do we grow a young generation of entrepreneurs, especially in the South African context.
And in terms of like the formal titles of what you do right now.
Ashraf, I'm the MD of a company called Siacoca Technologies. We connect businesses using technology. We provide them with technology platforms so that they can become more productive. So, if you think about it in terms of telephony, VoIP solutions, fiber connectivity, microwave, satellite solutions, and the technology, a whole host of technology around that. So that's what I really do on a day-to-day basis.
And is that for you something like the manner born, where you always had a feel for that, or did that grow into you as you understood how important being tech enabled is to developing companies and countries?
Ashraf, if I look at my youth, I was really, I love technology. I love computers. And I was in school at the time when computers were just coming about. And I remember when I went to university and we played around with the computer, it was a 286 XT computer, which I think had about 4 KB of RAM and 40 megs of hard drive space. And you think about that, and that was the most powerful computer at the university. And that what brought this passion for technology. And over the years, it has grown. I love technology. I love bringing technology into the field and letting smaller businesses harness technology that was previously available only to large corporates.
And share with us, examples of how your enabling has actually enabled businesses. I mean, can you share some examples of what's happened to them and that you can take back now and say, well, thumbs up, that's worked.
Well, if I take let's take a classical example. There's this number of small plumbers that you find. They always come and do work at home, and they would, your tap is leaking, and you call a plumber. That plumber comes to your home, and most often you'd find he doesn't have an invoice to give through to you. You need to make payment. He wants 100 rands, and now you look in your wallet for 100 rands. I don't carry any cash in my wallet at all these days. I only have cards, and nowadays I don't even carry a wallet because I just carry my cell phone around. And when he comes to my house and he wants to get paid, then there's a little bit of a debate now. I need to go and find that 100 rands, and sometimes I found myself scrapping around for 20 rand notes and 50 rand notes to pay the plumber. And what we've now enabled is the plumber to come to the home, issue you with a receipt, an invoice from his phone, and you can make payment via either a Zapper, or he carries a Yoku with him, and he does a little bit of a swipes your card. You can pay anyone, anyway, at any time nowadays. And these are some of the things that allow them to become more professional. Their business has grown. They have more control over their business. They have better administration over their business. So, in the past where he came to my home, he did some work, and then I didn't have cash. And he said, okay, I'll come tomorrow to collect the cash. And he forgot about it, and I forgot about it. And it affected his cash flow. Nowadays, he has better management over his cash flow as well.
That's great. Yeah. Are you, I mean, you've done so many things and you do so many things. Are you exactly where you want to be? I mean, or is there urging to be doing something else?
I think that as South Africans, and Ashraf, you do this very well. You talk about us being champion South Africans, and we try to buy into that that concept of the champion. I think there's a lot more that we as South Africans can do. We are a great country. We are a great nation. We have great things. We have so much going for us, and we have to now start taking the experiences that we've had as individuals, the experiences that we've had as a community, and start growing the next generation. And I think that there's a lot more that we can do.
And how do we do that? And so, I mean, there's two levels. One is what should you do? The other is what should I do? But the more important audience are the people watching, looking and listening to us, right? And we want to impact on them. So how does a person who's, carrying on with the daily chores of life, and I think for many people just battling to make ends meet, right? How do they then switch on to your vision of doing more and leaving for the next generation?
What does it take? I ask myself that question as a resident in my suburb. What does it take for me to change my suburb? It takes for me to go outside my gate and pick up the litter that's on the street. And if each one of us just went outside our gates and picked up the litter on the street, it would make a huge difference to our suburb. If we start just cleaning up on the verges, it makes a huge difference. We sit at present and we complain about municipalities not cutting the grass on the verge. Many of us have a little rake at home and a little slasher, and we can go and cut the verge and make our verges look neat. And that neatness then starts bringing in this wonderful feeling in us. And I think it just starts at the basic levels. Can we get the basic levels right? We don't need to start changing the huge, the nation, and do the nation building and all that. We start just at the street level. I think we can create a champion nation.
I mean, it's interesting. I mean, you have your tentacles connected, in business, in tech. Then I think with the KwaZulu-Natal government from an economic point of view, and also links to Indonesia, the Minar Chamber. I mean, we can go on. People must Google you and find out about all those things, right? How did you, connect all those things, but still ultimately get down to what you're saying? Besides the verges, and we made the point, you champion a country by championing the community. How do you totally change a community beyond the verges, like, effectively become a self-governance of a suburb?
Ashraf, one of my great friends who had a great influence on me was a Singaporean by the name of Lai Hock. Lai Hock, unfortunately, passed on 2 or 3 years ago. Young person. He was qualified at Berkeley. He did technology at Berkeley. He was one of Google's top AI engineers. He was top in the world, highest ranked AI engineer. And Lai Hock was probably in great demand. Google would have made him one of their top senior executives at some point. He one day went for a hike in the Sahara Desert. And he tells me he was sitting out in the Sahara Desert at night, looking up at the stars, and he says, this journey of his has to come to an end. This journey of being in technology has to come into an end. And now a Berkeley graduate who is the top AI engineer at Google goes back home to Singapore, which is a high-tech country, and he decides that he's going to make a difference in a small village. And so he sets up a little farming community. And his whole idea was, how do you reconnect back with the land? And that had a great influence with me, that we can live in technology, we can live in a 4IR world, but we still need to connect back to the land. And I remember a conversation that I had once with the former Prime Minister of Malaysia, Tun Abdullah Badawi, who was Prime Minister in 2005. And he said to me that as Malaysia grew in terms of technology, one of the biggest mistakes they made was they forgot about the rural agriculture. They forgot about the rural villages. And so now they are at a point where they need to rebuild agriculture. They need to rebuild villages. And that to me says that we can expand in technology. We can expand in the 4IR field. And those are the things that will take us to the next generation. But at the same time, we must not forget the basics. And for me, those two incidents have become life changers for me. that how do I then connect up, not just at the broad spectrum, but also at the lower level.
Well, what does being a Muslim mean to you? I mean, it's Ramadan, so it's very, very topical that I talk to you about that.
It's a tough question, Ashraf. We all have our personal views on what being a Muslim is. And for me, being a Muslim means that I must be a balanced individual. I must balance my deen. I must balance my faith. I must balance my philosophy with my being a human in a wider context of the world. And so for me personally, being a Muslim does not mean just making my salah and praying my du'as and keeping my fast, but it's how can I be a better human? How can I be a contributor to society? Because when we talk about us being as Ashraful Makhlukat, the best of creations, the best of creation is not just being the best of Muslim, but it's the best of creation. And so how can I be the better individual? How can I be the best of creation? For me, that is what...
Well, I mean, that's such an interesting one. Is there an example of, maybe an Islamic incident that you've now been able to use, like your friend, the Singaporean's example about understanding the land, that you've now utilized in your day-to-day life? So it's premised on Islamic, it's an Islamic story, but then you can apply that to modern day example. Has that happened to you?
Well, if I think about, when we were children in the madrasas and we went to our ustads, they had this passion of growing us up as individuals, growing us up as Muslims. And so I think about those people that gave back to the community. They were often unsung heroes of our community. And for me, the knowledge that they imparted, they've set the ground on which we walk on. So, the ulama that we have had been in contact with, the kind of thinking that they've had, have set us on the ground. So I have had the good fortune of having the du'as of my parents, my mother, my father, the du'as of the ulama that have grown me, that put me on this path. And so whatever I do, I think back on my responsibility to my teachers, to my ustads, to my parents, and how is it that I can inculcate the values that they have taught to me, not just into myself, but into my children and the next generation and broader society.
Yeah. What for you then is the biggest challenge in South Africa as a country?
Ashraf, that's a topic for a total discussion that we could spend a couple of hours on. But I think that the biggest challenge for us as South Africans is that we are too willing to accept mediocrity. And when I say we are too willing to accept mediocrity, whether it is mediocrity in government, mediocrity in the political space, mediocrity in our education system, mediocrity in our healthcare, we are accepting of it. We've actually, and I say this not as a negative way, but something that should jolt us into action. We've actually been beaten down into submission. And this is now a time when we need to say, well, it comes to a point where we need to change. And I think that the greatest change that we have to make is that we have to have younger people coming into society. Ashraf, back in the days when we were at university, we were activists in the university and built in this culture of activism, this feeling that we needed to give back to the community. And I think that the younger generation is starting to come back into that. Those residential communities, the suburban communities, the street committees, we need to revive those so that we start changing things at the ground level.
Well, fascinating talking to Ebrahim Patel. He's done a whole lot more. In fact, I want to pick up on your role in the Minara chamber purely because I get their WhatsApps every single day, so they're in my mind, right? You were the prime mover to establish it. So why was it established, and what impact has it had?
Ashraf, I was the founder of the chamber, and if I go back into history, it was in 1999, the South African Black Taxi Association, SAPTA. James Ngoya was a good friend of mine. He was the president of SAPTA, and he invited me to what was at that time called FAPCOS, the Federation of Black Business Owners, and he invited me to the 10th AGM. And it so happened that in 1999, at the 10th AGM, the keynote speaker was at that time the Deputy President of South Africa, Thabo Mbeki. And he made a statement and he said, FAPCOS was established 10 years ago by hairdressers, salon owners, shebeen owners, and small businesses, taxi owners. And in 10 years, they had grown to having a total turnover in FAPCOS of 450 million rands. And he said, we've done this through the unity that we have between us. We've shared our resources and we've shared the knowledge that we have. And as I was sitting and listening to Thabo Mbeki's talk, I thought to myself, he's quoting from the Quran. And why is it we as Muslims are not joining hands? Why is it that we are not able to create a unified structure that will assist us? And then I thought back onto the challenges that we had as Muslim businesses. Remember 1999, we had just come out of apartheid. Most businesses were not members of chambers. The Johannesburg Chamber of Commerce wouldn't have accepted many non-white businesses as members. The Durban Chamber was not accepting it. And a lot of delegations, trade delegations, were coming from the Muslim majority countries like UAE and Malaysia and Saudi Arabia were coming down to South Africa to start trade relationships with South Africa. And not many of them were being exposed to the South African Muslim community. And I thought that this was a wonderful time in which we can all get together as businesses and create a formal structure that then represents Muslim businesses. So not only do we represent Muslim businesses, but in the formation of the Minara Chamber of Commerce, and I'm dwelling on it for a couple of seconds, in the formation of it, our constitution says that membership is open to all, regardless of race, color, creed, or religion. So we accepted even those that were not Muslim so that we can create a strong bond in the business community. And of course, it's based on Islamic ethos. So, you know, if a person was owner of a bottle store, they wouldn't be able to become a member of the chamber. But we opened it up to everyone. And in doing so, government recognized it. They created a formal relationship with the Minara Chamber of Commerce. They see us as being a very important organized business movement in the country. And so we represented businesses, we create opportunities. And in the last few years, we've now started to say, how can we teach a younger generation of people that haven't been exposed to business, don't have a knowledge of business in the community itself. And I'm talking about those that have come from, let's say, the Black community of South Africa that haven't had exposure in the past to business. How can we now take our collective experience and start sharing it with them? Because, you know, you can go to university and you can learn how to manage a business, but it's your uncle and your father who will teach you how to do business. And there's a different concept between the two.
And therefore, has it worked? I mean, I think your point about you know, international trade missions coming to South Africa post 1994 makes complete sense. So I think your timing was spot on. We'll be 5 years down the line then. Has it had the desired impact where these countries from the Middle East, from Europe, perhaps and certainly from Southeast Asia, have come to South Africa and been exposed to South African, not just Muslim business people, but also other, you know, privately owned businesses and vice versa?
Yes, it has. I like to think that we made a huge impact. As the Chamber, we've made a huge impact on the South African business environment, in that we've built a lot of relationships and formal relationships between chambers of commerce in other countries. And so we share a lot of knowledge, we share a lot of trade information and delegations that are coming down. And if I give you one simple example that just comes to mind right now, about 2011, the Pakistan Rice Exporters Association was looking to enter into the South African market. And when they contacted us, we introduced them to some of the importers of rice in the country. And within the next 6 months, they had actually tripled the amount of rice that they were exporting to South Africa. And so it created a synergy between South African and Pakistani businesses. We've done the same with countries like even the UK. We've built a relationship with formally with UKTI, the UK Trade Investment Office, which then resulted in a number of British companies coming down to Durban for the first time. We actually hosted the Lord Mayor of London for the first time. He came to South Africa, and we had the privilege of hosting him because of the relationship that we had in UKTI. And so that built the relationship between the South African business community and the UK. So I like to think, and if I look back into the last 20 years of the existence of the Chamber, we have made a huge impact on South African business environment.
Well, I'm certainly I'm aware of it, and I'll take a closer interest as well. But having said that, you're not the president of the Minara Chamber any longer. But what you are involved in is the Honorary Consul of the Republic of Indonesia to Durban. What does all that mean? Tell me. And that's fairly new.
Yes, in March of 2020, I was appointed by the President of Indonesia and by the South African President as the Honorary Consul of the Republic of Indonesia in Durban. So every country has an ambassador, has an embassy. The Republic of Indonesia has an ambassador and an embassy based in Pretoria, which is the formal representative of the Indonesian government. They don't have, or at that point, they did not have representation in Durban and KZN, and I was appointed as the honorary consul. So my role is essentially how to build the linkages between South Africa, particularly KZN and Indonesia, not just the trade linkages, but also the cultural and the political linkages between the two countries, and how we can strengthen those relationships that already exist. And at the same time, if there are South Africans that are looking to go to Indonesia, how to facilitate for them to go to Indonesia. And also, it's a small part of the role that I play. If there are Indonesians based in Durban or have come to Durban and have had any issues, then they would call on me to assist them from a consular perspective. So in June of 2020, during lockdown, there were 21 Indonesian sailors that were on a cruise ship that had been parked in Durban, and they needed to get home. And we had to work together with the provincial authorities, with SAPS, Department of Health, in order to facilitate for them to return home.
Okay, fascinating. Well, I'll tell you what, I haven't yet been to Indonesia or Jakarta, but I've been the closest I've been is Kuala Lumpur and Singapore. Close, but not quite close enough, right? Let's talk about other things. What's your purpose? I mean, what do you see as I'm Ebrahim Patel, and this is my purpose?
I think my purpose is to make a difference to society today. It's to make a difference to the country. And so that ultimately I think about my children. What sort of future am I leaving for my children? What is it that they are going to inherit from me? And I don't want them to inherit wealth from me. I want them to inherit a passion, a knowledge. I want them to become contributors to society. So the best thing that my purpose is, how can I inculcate and encourage a younger generation to start making a difference to society?
And I mean, you made the point from the outset that you're a connector, right? And having shared comments on Facebook, I think we finally met up when I asked that question on Facebook to say, who would you like to take out to lunch? And your response was like, Ashraf, Garda, you. And that happened because we got to Durban and we met up there, right?
Well, it wasn't lunch. I think it was dinner that we had here in Durban.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Yeah. But then how important is that where you reach out and you identify and you make that connection and you make it happen?
Ashraf, one of the things that I believe that business is the most important criteria for business and anyone that wants to advance is networking. We always talk about networking. How do we network? And networking is not just about going somewhere and start talking about business. It's about meeting people and start talking about the common passions that could be shared, or using the information that you have to try and channel it in a different direction. And so we bring people together. If I give an example that affected the Muslim community a few years ago, you would recall, I think it was 2015, when the Department of Agriculture put a ban on Kajur and Zamzam coming with the Hujjaj coming back into South Africa. And there was this whole thing that you needed to have. It was a phyto certificate that you had to get from the Department of Agriculture. And so everyone was up in arms, and there was this whole hoo-ha in the media about the fact that we could not bring our Kajur and our Zamzam into the country because there was this phyto certification that was needed. I then wrote to the head of the Department of Agriculture based in Pretoria, and I explained to him that the Kajur that we are bringing from Saudi Arabia is not the seeds of the Kajur. It's actually Kajur that has already been processed. It's broken off the trees. There is no way that we can get the phyto certificate because you're buying the Kajur in the supermarket. You're not going to the farm to collect it. And the amount of Kajur that is being brought is probably 1 kilo or 2 kilos of Kajur. And the Zamzam is coming bottled. And when I explained this to him and I wrote to him and I laid out exactly what transpired, he wrote back and said, well, there's no need for you to have the phyto certification in that. And then they withdrew that need from the Department of Agriculture. And so you are then allowed to bring in the Kajur. And I think that is, if we can create those kind of connectivities, if we can reach out to people in the right places, we can make huge differences in whatever way.
Well, it's something I just posted today on Twitter, I think, about making champion connections. And I mean, that's a good example of that. Our time is just about up. We've got a minute to go. So I'm going to end with this. What does being a champion mean to you?
Ashraf, you ask that question of us quite often, right? And you have a wide range of people that you are starting to influence. And being the champion means, can I make a difference? Can I contribute positively? Can not just to my community, not just to my family, not just to KZN, not just to South Africa, but can I contribute positively to a wider range of society? Can I make a difference in a wider range of society? So, as South Africans for too long, we've had this insular mentality, because we were a pariah nation for 50 years, we've been very inward looking. We've never looked outwardly, and we've never looked at how it is that we can influence even the SADC countries, the Southern African region. How can we start doing our business with the SADC region? So, in South Africa, we have 58 million people. So your consumer market is 58 million. But if we start talking about the ECOWAS regions, the COMESA regions, all of a sudden we're reaching 500 million people. Now, can I, as an individual, start making a difference in helping people to reach out into that, in helping people to make a difference in their communities? So, one of the programs that we've run as Minara is the Young Entrepreneur Program. So in that Young Entrepreneur Program, we've taken 30 young entrepreneurs, we put them through a intensive 7-week program to train them on how to be entrepreneurs. And I can tell you, they made a huge difference. You'll see a number of young entrepreneurs that have become very obvious in the media space. They've become very influential on Instagram.
Yeah.
They've come through our program. They've won awards thereafter. A young gentleman from Amlazi, who was working for an aluminium company, came to us and he wanted to be part of this program. He was making window frames. We put him through the program. He understood what he needed to do in his business. And today he's making window frames for homes up in Umhlanga and Lelusha. And that to me,
well, there you are. Well, there you are. You've done just that. Well, I'll tell you what, great chatting to you. Your time is up, but it just means there's the rest of the day for you to connect, to create, to collaborate with many other people, because you are very much this champion connector that we speak about. Ebrahim Patel, thank you for your time and for allowing me to.
Thanks, Ashraf. Shukran. Assalamu alaikum. And have a wonderful Ramadan. And if we don't speak, Eid Mubarak.
Inshallah, I'm sure we will. Absolutely. So there you are. Are you inspired? You absolutely should be inspired by Ebrahim Patel. Now, talking about movements and impact, there are ongoing problems around Palestinians and forced removal. We'll talk about that as we wrap up the show in a moment.
We're doing it audio.